Live from New York. It's the show. I was a little thrown off.
Yeah, I know. Brew bringing up very grim stuff. But go ahead. We're going to have a great show. It's the show that what?
Show. It's the show that just loves cats and dogs.
Yeah. That's true.
Okay. We start with overrated. It's Josh Allen. A player poll ran by ESPN. Josh Allen was voted as the most overrated player, just getting one more vote than Tua and Jalen Hurts, who were tied for second. Justin Herbert was...
Is that the print?
Yeah, I was going to say, but it's kind of like a low-key, it's not like compliment.
You think?
It's a compliment?
Well, I'm saying none of there's no bad players on that list. You understand what I mean? Like, it's being underrated is a low-key diss, where it's like, no, a lot of people don't think you're that good. This is, well, it's, these are all good quarterbacks.
No, there's one quarterback on there that Hubs constantly refers to as being mid.
Tua?
And he's
That's
overrated.
Rude. Okay.
So
Trevor?
Yeah.
Well, this segment's not about
he's
the
mid.
Prince.
Trevor.
And they're saying
Some
he's
people
overrated.
Well, no, I think honestly, I think 7 of those 8 votes are due to me. I think it's my fault.
Meanwhile, Josh reacted to his overrated number one by saying, "So you're telling me I was voted as the number one ... best trash talker?" That's true too. He also won that award.
Yeah.
Let's go, and he put a GIF or GIF, depending on what you like, of Lil Yachty. So Josh Allen, most overrated, fair or foul?
Well, he's an excellent player.
True.
Who's also overrated. Wow. So I don't know if I actually would not vote him the most overrated player in the league. But if you were to ask me, is Josh Allen underrated? No. Properly rated? Well, by some. Overrated? Yeah, a bit.
Yeah.
And I would use the evidence of an argument we had a couple weeks ago. It was brief. It wasn't even the full topic, which is Brew just kind of flippantly saying, I mean, he's a Hall of Fame player. That makes him overrated.
Yeah.
He's not a Hall of Fame.
I think he'll be a Hall of Famer.
He is, he has, but those are the things that make him a touch overrated. And I think specifically, because I understand Brew's not saying if he retired today, he would make the Hall of Fame, but you think he's on the trajectory. He's a dynamic player, a scary player, who is also, in my estimation, and I think the numbers back it up, overrated as a passer. And we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about Jalen Hurts as a passer. I think he's better than Jalen as a passer. Lamar as a passer. I think he's better than Lamar as a passer. But we have no problem with other quarterbacks saying, great football player, would love to have him. Some holes in their game, though, as a passer. Josh has different holes than those guys. But as far as consistently delivering as a passer, I think he's a little overrated. Last year, Brew, it was very boom or bust. And we can show it to you. Half his games, just again from the very kind of standard passer rating metric, excellent. Half his games left something to be desired. None of those mid games, Wilds, as you would like to say.
In the middle, though, it comes out as
a roller
right,
coaster.
and
it's
a roller coaster. And then since his breakout season in 2020, we can show you this as well. This is when it looked like 2020. Oh, he's on his way. That was year 3 to being an elite passer. Since then, it's been nothing close to it. And so, again, that is just the passer. That is not the rushing stuff. Right. And so I'm saying, but I think that most people believe Josh Allen, without the running, is a top 3 quarterback. That him, Burrow, and Mahomes.
About that. I'm not sure. You really think that?
Yeah, I think
take out the running,
that he's
and
still,
people would say he's top. I don't think so.
Okay, well, so that's my take. Is I just think I think his trajectory is a little overrated on the Hall of Fame front, and I think Josh Allen, the passer and decision maker, is a touch overrated. So that's where I stand.
For the people, and this is now obviously everybody knows Mahomes on another level than everybody. But over the past few years, there's been the debate, 1 and 1A. Josh Allen's right there with Mahomes. Maybe he's even better. For those that say that, absolutely, he's overrated. But outside, and that's nobody's really saying, or very few are saying that
at this
now.
point, no.
So I don't think he's certainly not the most overrated player in the league. And I would throw this at you. And we have to, quarterbacking nowadays, especially because we got a 2-time MVP who's primarily a running quarterback, all right? It is not just about passing, All right, so I agree. He's not an ultra elite passer if you just throw the football. But when you combine that with the running that he does, he's absolutely elite. And look at these numbers to show it over the last 5 years. He's number 1 in the league in touchdowns, number 2 in total yards to Mahomes, number 2 to Mahomes in regular season wins, and tied for second with Joe Burrow and Tom Brady for playoff wins.
Shout out Brady.
Now, I get it. That's not Mahomes. He's not Mahomes, but that's better than everybody else, every other quarterback in the league. And regarding the touchdowns, we believe Mahomes is the greatest we've ever seen. Or second, if you're
what the heck is going on?
you're Kevin Wilds.
You think?
But
Okay,
yeah, I think he's the best. He's not the GOAT yet, but he's the best quarterback I've ever seen.
The distinction between the most talented playing at the highest level and the most accomplished.
He has to keep accomplishing to be the GOAT. But he's got 23 more TDs than a guy that might end up being the GOAT. And so I don't think he's overrated. The most overrated, I actually think, is Justin Herbert. Oh. And I like Justin Herbert a lot. Don't get me wrong. I think he's excellent. He's got obviously all the arm talent. I think he's mentally and physically tough too. Like he'll play through injuries and all that. But this is a guy that we talked about the athletics quarterback tiers. Mm-hmm. The last 3 years, he's been the 5th best quarterback in the league. He's got 1 playoff appearance in 4 years and no playoff win.
This morning, Danny on Breakfast Ball had him as the 3rd best quarterback in the league. There is a Justin Herbert hive out there that it really irks Wilds. It semi-irks me. So that's why I said.
Would you agree with me that he's the most? And I'm not saying he's not really good, and he might go to the stratosphere, but now he hasn't accomplished
I think Herbert has the most people who, in my opinion, wildly overstate how great he is. You know what I mean? Like I think that there is an element of that. I don't know that I think he's the most overrated.
Don't you think his star has fallen a little bit?
He's declined the last few seasons.
But not. I don't think he has in the eyes of the arm talent folks. Like, my analysis is always a rich tapestry of all of it.
Of course. A lot of people are just arm talent.
Arm talent or just the box score. Can I play this is actually a Tom Brady sot, but it's him talking to Josh Allen.
I like that.
Wilds references this a number of times. He's tweeted about it. And this, to me, is indicative of what I think Josh needs to do to take, because he obviously has all the arm talent in the world, so how can he become a better passer? And the answer, oddly, is just listen to one of the 2 greatest quarterbacks of all time. And that's when we've talked about that divisional game against the Chiefs this year. That's some of the stuff I've talked about. Not that, like, his pass into the end zone was a terrible decision, but you had a guy cutting over the middle, like the not taking a profit at times, and when they were losing,
reckless.
The recklessness really hurt him.
Can I show, Dusty, before we move on, can I show the percentage of Bill's scoring graphic? Yeah. He kind of didn't ignore Tom Brady's advice, but we were looking for reasons why Tom Brady's advice didn't really stick. And I assume it's because, like, man, I've got to do it. I've got to do it all. I'm responsible for 86% of my team's
It's also who he is as a player, and you have to be who you are. You can tweak it here and there, and he needs to, but he's not going to be able to be Tom Brady. They're completely different types.
But also, Brady's advice would have been just as smart if the Bills had a running back they gave the ball to inside the 5 instead of having Josh do it, and then those numbers would be much more in line with the rest of the league.
Mahomes took Brady's advice last year.
Yes, and the year before. They scored a bunch of points, but he was dinking and dunking for both of these Super Bowls.
Looks like we're 4-0. I'll live to fight another day. All right, on the other end of the spectrum, Brock Purdy and Matthew Stafford were voted as the most underrated quarterbacks in the poll.
Here's the results.
As most overrated. Purdy and Stafford at 1, then a 4-way tie for 3rd, which is strange. Kirk Cousins, I guess. Goff, Jordan Love, and this is oddly a compliment. Shout out to all the Alabama alumni who voted for Bryce. So, Brew, are you buying Brock is still underrated?
I'm very interested.
Yeah. Look, I do think most people have come around on Brock Purdy. Most people. Joe Montana and Steve Young, pretty big names.
Yeah.
They love him. All right?
Where'd they play?
Absolutely love
Where'd they
him.
play?
Well, in the Super Bowl, for one, and for the Niners. The top writers out there in the Bay, Michael Silver and Dieter Kurtenbach, they love him. I haven't seen him focusing on his interceptions. All right? The players, remember the ESPN Top 100 Player Poll, he was the 8th rated quarterback, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Sandoz tiers, he was
12. Sandoz tiers, but he was also tier 2.
Right, but he was the 12th quarterback, and I think you were okay.
Because I think that fluctuates from year to year. He also was 4th in the MVP voting. That's love. That's some respect. So I think most people, like I said, have come around on him, but I don't deal with most people on a daily basis. I deal with Nick Wright.
That's true.
All right? And Nick, you still, I don't think you're coming around. You're trying to act
I think he's the 15th or 16th best quarterback.
Okay, that's underrated. That's underrated.
Okay.
Because of what he's done. And I don't know if you'll admit it, if he was the 8th quarterback or 8th player taken in a draft and had done exactly what he's done.
I will admit that.
And even I would feel even more confident.
But I feel like that's sometimes like circular logic, because one of the reasons I don't believe in him, those wouldn't exist if he were a first-round draft pick. Because if you were bigger and stronger, he would have been a potential first-round draft pick. If he were bigger and stronger, I would be more likely to believe in him. So, like, some of that stuff, they're not drafted randomly out of a hat. A lot of the things that I care about also typically NFL GMs do. Measurables, pedigree, things like that. And so I'm just, like, so you understand what I mean? Like,
yes, to me it feels like your main, and maybe I'm wrong, your main criticism or the last thing you wanted to see, it was him coming back and overcoming adversity. He's done that. But it feels like you want to see him do it without the great supporting cast. And what I'm saying is, outside of Patrick Mahomes and maybe Lamar Jackson, because he hasn't had great receivers necessarily, what quarterback out there is doing it without great supporting cast?
But so it's actually more, if I am being totally honest about Brock, which I have tried to always be, and not hide this, he has a massive shadow to move out of, and that's the Jimmy Garoppolo shadow, which is everyone now, we can pretend, but the audience knows, and I think deep down everyone knows, we went to war for years about Jimmy Garoppolo. It was one of the running gags on this show, Dusty the Graphic, and now we can say he's just a winner, all this stuff. That's fine, but we went to war about it.
Let me
finish real quick. Okay, but so the thing is, Jimmy at his best had 85% of the numbers. He had a 102 rating one year. Purdy, I think, had 111 last year. In his 5 games that he had Christian McCaffrey, he put up numbers almost identical to Purdy last season. But again, set that aside. Your guys' big thing is the success that Purdy has had, not just statistically, but team-wise. And it is identical to Jimmy G's. They went to a Super Bowl and lost to the Chiefs. They lost in the NFC Championship game. Now, the Purdy NFC Championship game loss, obviously we don't hold it against him, but they got there with him. So because of that, and then you add to it that Jimmy G left and is basically out of the league.
Well, his body betrayed him.
Okay, but see, so that's the thing.
Well,
No.
That was a joke, but his problem was injuries. Now, I'm not saying he would have been an all-time great quarterback, but he was injured all the time.
But when he was healthy,
they got to the conference championship.
Exactly.
But go ahead.
Just Jimmy G's final games in San Francisco, statistically, which were the only games he played with this crew, with Christian McCaffrey, with Trent Williams, with this crew, were the best of his career. He then, before suffering an injury with the Raiders, went to the Raiders, was their starting quarterback. They wanted him. They got rid of Derek Carr to get him. Was instantly awful. His body hadn't betrayed him yet. So because of that, I would have a massive skepticism of anyone who stepped in, particularly if they were the final pick of the draft, undersized, and then particularly if, when we saw a glimpse, we've never seen him without Christian, but a glimpse of him without Trent, and they can't win, and he's bad, and those things. So yes, am I holding things against him? I am, but it is to me, totally reasonable. If in any business, if the business is humming and somebody leaves and we put someone else in and the person who leaves, we find out stunk and the business keeps humming and then the new person's like, hey, look at what I've done. It's like, well, actually, the guy who was here before you, I think that's
But there's
reasonable.
That's too much of a generalization. Because when they got to the Super Bowl with Garoppolo, what'd they do in the playoffs? Run.
Passes
One game he
whatever.
threw 8 passes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right? That's not the case with Purdy. Purdy saved them in the NFC Championship game against Detroit.
Well, to use
and
your
was
guys'
big
thing-
against Green Bay as well.
Right, but to use what you guys say about Trevor, he put out the fire that he set.
Well, it wasn't just him. He wasn't as bad as Trevor.
Okay, no,
You can't
he
compare
wasn't as
that.
bad and then he wasn't as good. I agree, but it was they were in that massive deficit, and I get those for some reason. I get those 2 games very confused in my head. One of them he was terrible early. The other one he was mediocre early. But then yes, I like.
And his numbers are just way better than Garoppolo's individually, because that's part of it too for me. It's not just the wins.
The air yards.
Yeah, I mean, there's.
No, I mean, he's led the league in passer rating. What the 2 years he's started?
So, do you? I cut you off when you were going to say something, and then
I think that we all acknowledge that Jimmy G was not a great passer.
We just talked about the wins.
The foundation of it was this guy knows
70%.
how to win.
Right.
And he's like, you know what I'm big on? Intangibles. And we kind of acknowledge that the arm talent wasn't there.
I don't know.
But we don't have those stats for Brock.
The only thing we went to
Brock's
was the
airing it out.
winning graphic.
No,
That's it.
But
we didn't go to his stats.
I didn't know we were going to do this, and maybe they can pull it live in the control room because we have them built. We can show you the first 27 starts of each of their careers, the stats, not just the wins. We did it 3 weeks ago, and we can show you Jimmy G's final 5 games as a Niner, which was once they got Christian, and the passer rating was like 110. We can show you that.
That's 5 games. That's not big enough. I can show Cooper Rush stats over 5 games. But
it's also, Brew, the only games he got with this crew.
All right, but the argument is like the challenge, if we're going to flesh this out, is last pick of the draft, just went to overtime, left, we do the whole thing, left in the field with the lead in the Super Bowl. Can this guy do anything? It's the same argument that I have theoretically with Tua. Can this guy do anything on the field to prove that he's elite? Or is he just handcuffed because there's so much talent around him? He's like, well, I'm stuck because I can't do anything.
So the answer is yes, he can, because by definition, he won't always have so much talent around him. By definition, he won't.
So if he wins the Super Bowl this year with this team,
I have to
you won't give him that love.
I certainly will not. If I'm just saying right now, if he wins the Super Bowl this year with this team, it will not resonate to me the same as if, let me pick just an example of a guy that we don't argue about a lot. If Herbert wins it this year with that team, that would not resonate as much. Well, that's what I'm saying. But
the past several years, he's had 2 very good receivers.
100%. So Dust said he pulled the graphic. So when we say that guys, those numbers, I understand that Purdy's numbers are better. And I think Jimmy G's a bad quarterback, and I think Purdy's an average quarterback. But to act like
that passer rating is 11 points high.
I understand, but a 99 passer rating is very good, and Jimmy G is very bad. So
I think that's too far.
Okay, so
when they were, look,
here we go.
No, but seriously, they were 0-5 when 1-10 when Jimmy G got there, and he won 5 straight games. And Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch paid him the most money of any player in the history of the NFL.
Exactly right. So this is where we.
So I'm just saying to say he was bad. They won. They got to the Super Bowl.
And that's my point. And that's why we're just not going to agree on this. That's why because I think.
But you said months ago your thing was. The only thing left I need to see is overcome some adversity. Come back in some games. And once that happened, you went to something else.
To be clear, there were 2 things I wanted to see. Him succeed without the Avengers and come back from adversity.
Has Patrick Mahomes, I won't go Mahomes, but anybody else? Anybody else? Josh Allen, when they stopped throwing the ball to Stephon Diggs the last 5 games, his numbers were terrible. And they won, but 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
So here's the question I have for Wilds, because I don't think I'm going to move Brew.
No,
because you don't like, you say all the time.
Yeah.
you don't play fantasy football.
Well, I actually do, but I just say it to be competitive.
Yeah, you understand? But you always do when it's defending guys. You are totally fine living in a fantasy world whenever Daniel Jones comes up. You're like, well, what about his offensive line? Give him a good offensive line.
Yeah.
You are totally fine with doing the exact same thing that I do it with Purdy, but if it's in reverse. If a guy has bad players around him, and you're like, he's actually better than he's allowed to show.
That's fair.
That, you do it all the time. Everyone does it. But when I do it, say, hey, this guy's actually worse than he shows because he has great players around him. You're like, that's not fair. What do you want him to do? But it's the same logic we use across sports all the time, which is how do we try to evaluate an individual in a team dynamic? Are they being helped or hurt by their coaching, by their supporting cast, all of it? And so I think Brock Purdy has impressed me. Going into last year, I thought he was good, the 25th quarterback in football. Right now, I put pencil to paper, I had him come out at 16th. But do I think he's elite? Do I think he's underrated? No, I don't. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.